people registered for the webinar, and there are more and more joining. So it seems that this topic is really interesting and important to all sorts of organizations, because when I looked at the list of registrations, I've noticed local authorities, regional authorities, representatives of national institutions, EU institutions, think tanks and NGOs and consultants and representatives of financing institutions. So it shows that there is a possibility to build a very interesting network, and also not to just present some information to you today, but also to trigger, hopefully trigger cooperation that you can benefit from over the next few years. For housekeeping, since we have quite a lot of people here today, kind request that if you have any questions, first of all, write them in the chat box, and my colleagues Diana from Federan and Pauline from Eurocities will be checking the chat and answering some of your questions if they are straightforward to answer, helping you with technical issues, etc. Please keep your mics off. You can keep your cameras on. It's always nice to see your faces. And we will also have 2 slots for discussion and Q&A, and that's where we will invite you to show yourselves if you would like to, and switch on your mics. But please first raise your hand using the icons, raised hands, and then my colleagues will be able to remind me who would like to ask some questions. So, before I pass on the floor, the mic or the screen to Christophe from CINEA, I just wanted to talk you through what we will be talking about today. You will get an overview of what type of financing instruments there are out there when you can't or do not want to be reliant on subsidies. Could I ask everyone to switch their mics off for the time being, please? Thank you. Some of you are here because you are supporting cities in designing and implementing projects, including looking for financing. Some of you are here as private consultants or representatives of local authorities, project managers who just manage carrying out projects, but also treasury, who is responsible for choosing the right financing and negotiating contracts, which is great because we will have a lot of opportunities for all of you to benefit from Prospect. But first of all, we would like to set the scene and explain why it's actually important to start thinking about other financing instruments than subsidies. And that's why I'm very happy that Christophe from CINEA, the European Agency for Climate Infrastructure and Environment, agreed to be here with us and tell us a little bit more about what's in the plans that would affect local authorities and regional authorities as regards the scale and the challenge of climate action. So, Christophe, can I now ask you to share your screen if you have a presentation, or just talk us through what you think would be the most important for everyone?
I think you can see my presentation now. Is
yes.
that the case? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to introduce this event. So I'm Christophe Milin, working at the European Commission at CINEA, and to set the mood for today, I wanted to introduce this discussion with some generic consideration to emphasize the importance and also the urgency of investing in climate action. Just so and as a way of introduction, I would like to use a visualization to show the range of potential future scenario of global greenhouse gases emission. This is based on data from the Climate Action Tracker, and it shows 5 scenarios. The first one is no climate policy, in the case where we wouldn't have taken action where we would have landed, and the projection showed something around 4 to even 5 degrees of of increase in temperatures by 2000 to 2100. And the second scenario is with the current policies that are in place, which lead to projected warming of 2.8 to 3.2 degree by 2100, based on current implemented policies. You also have a scenario with actual pledges and target as declared within the Paris Climate Agreement. And with these pledges, it is estimated that we could reach still an increase in temperature by 2.4 degrees before the end of the century, which is well beyond the overall target of the Paris Agreement. And as you see, the pathway to reach the 2 degrees increase in temperature, or even the 1.5 degrees increase in temperature, is very difficult. It's a very steep curve, and requires very significant efforts to get there. My main messages with this graph is that global warming is already here, and we are already facing its consequences. The temperature will continue to rise even if we stopped all emission today. As you see, the one where we land to where we actually reduce drastically our emissions still lead to an increase in global temperature. So even if we stop all emission today, it is clear that we won't stop all emission today, and so the longer we wait to act, the more difficult it becomes to reach our target. If you want to get to climate neutrality at any given point in time, you see that the longer you wait, the steeper the curve is. But what is particularly important to understand is that from the climate perspective, the key element is not so much where the curve is at a given point in time. The key data is the surface below the curve. That means the cumulative CO2 emissions since the beginning of the industrial age. If maybe I can use here. So you see, if you want to reach climate neutrality by 2050, let's say, if you do this going like this, or if you reduce already drastically and get to climate neutrality by 2050, the surface below the curve is not at all the same, and the impact of climate is not at all the same. So not only we need to produce a huge effort to drastically change our behavior, but we also need to do this as quickly as possible. To continue with this, sorry. Okay. To continue with this presentation and setting the mood for today's discussion, because before we discuss a large investment needed to achieve our climate target, I would like to discuss the cost of not investing in climate change mitigation. In April 2020, a research paper was published in Nature Communications journal that estimated the cost of failing to meet the Paris Climate Agreement, meaning failing to keep global temperature increase below 2 degrees. And the study showed that following current emission reduction effort, if we were to comply with the national declaration submitted, we will still reach economic shrinkage between $127 trillion up to $600 trillion until 2100. And if we fail to even implement this self-declared commitment, the economic losses would plunge over between 150 trillion up to 790 trillion until 2100. As a way of reference, global GDP in 2015 was approximately 105 trillion. And by a way of comparisons, you can take the estimation by the International Monetary Fund also in May 2020 that estimated that the global lockdown due to COVID-19 could have reached 9 trillion of losses between 2020 and 2021. So we see the order of magnitudes and the actually huge impact that not investing in climate action would have. So if I continue, and on the bright side, the same research paper published in Nature showed that whole country will be able to have a significant positive cumulative net income.
Sorry, Christophe.
Yeah, you're muted. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I was muted. Okay, I hope not for too long. So
only a few seconds, no worries.
Okay. So on the bright side, the research paper also showed that meeting the Paris Agreement could lead to a positive net income before 2100, but balancing losses and revenues would require investment, significant investment, but investments are not losses. The estimation was around 18 trillion dollars, between 18 trillion and 113 trillion dollars to be invested to actually balance losses and revenue, and even generate revenue by 2100. Most of this investment to be triggered by G20 countries, and as a way of magnitude, let's say, to compare this amount, that would mean for G20 countries to invest between 0.2 and 2% of their cumulative GDP every year in mitigation and adaptation action. So the important point is that investment are not losses, and by investing in climate action, we could actually generate revenues and not losses before 2100. Plus the fact that our children may be able to breathe, which is always a plus, no? If I continue, so we have the frame, and the ambitions that are needed, they are there and they won't go away. It's actually a big loss not to invest in climate action, and we need to do this, and we need to do this quickly as possible, because the longer we wait, the more greenhouse gas emissions are accumulated in the atmosphere, and the more impact we have on temperature rise. We had already ambitions in Europe for 2020. We have new ambitions now for 2030. And we have the goal of reaching climate neutrality in Europe by 2050. As I said, it's not, I mean, this ultimate goal is obviously important, but how we get to this point in 2050 is also very important. It's not at all the same to get to climate neutrality in the last year of the period just before 2050 than to invest drastically today and reduce the curve as quickly as possible, getting to neutrality by 2050. So we have an intermediate target by 2030 to reduce our emission by half compared to 1990. And this target is actually extremely important and as important as the climate neutrality target by 2050. There is a huge investment to be made, and most of it could be made at municipal level by cities and by actors at municipal level. Cities can play a major role in building the pipelines of projects, in aggregating also small projects and getting to sufficient size to also develop financial engineering and mobilize finance. Municipalities obviously also have a very strong role in organizing the market and organizing actors to make sure that they collaborate and we get to this target by 2030 and 50. I won't get into the details because it's actually the point of the discussion in the morning, but we have a number of instruments at EU level to support investment in climate action, support to direct investment with recovery and resilience facilities, with cohesion policy funds, just transition mechanism. We also have a number of instruments to leverage private investment with the InvestEU program, with ELENA facility, with technical support under LIFE. The idea is to structure the project and structure the market to make sure that we mobilize finance at a large scale for climate action. CINEA in this framework has probably key contribution to make to the European Green Deal by boosting efficient use of resources, exploiting and supporting cities and municipalities, exploiting the huge investment potential at their level, and supporting bridging the gap between local energy strategies and sustainable energy investment by building pipelines, standardizing, aggregating project, and overall building trust of investors. There is a tool at EU level, at city level, which is called the European City Facility, which provides lump sums to cities to develop from the strategy to develop investment concept, so they are able later on to discuss either with private investors, with other support schemes such as ELENA or PDA technical assistance and the life, and in the end discuss and mobilize finance from banks and other financial institutions. There are regular calls published in the frame of these EU city facilities, and we can provide more information if you want later after this discussion today. We also have support providing under the LIFE research program. Technical support to clean energy transition, technical support and support to local authorities also in developing their strategies and action to reduce emissions. Technical support to develop innovative financing schemes and discuss with financial institutions to a strong focus on buildings, and the idea also to support the refurbishment of housing and public buildings. There is a call actually with a deadline tomorrow. So if you're not aware of it, maybe it's slightly too late for this year, but we will publish a new call also this year, and we will promote it and so keep posted if you want some support from our side. And I will stop here for this very brief introduction, and I wish you a nice discussion.
Thank you, Christophe. I'm impressed how well you can keep the time. Before I would ask you some question, I wanted to see if there are any questions from our participants that would be an immediate reaction to your presentation. Looking at the chat, I don't think so, so we can move on. It was really important for me what you said, that the cost of not meeting the targets are so huge, and those costs are not just on a global level or EU level, but those costs and consequences would really affect regional and local authorities, who are usually on the end line of who need to approach those challenges and need to find a way to implement the project. So that for me was very important that you actually underlined it. And also that you underline the pressure that local and regional authorities are under, even if they have already climate and energy plans and they have an idea of what they need to do, but they are faced with the situation that the EU and the national level requires them to implement climate action on a very ambitious scale, but there are not necessarily enough support mechanisms, or maybe they do not have the capacity or experience in accessing those funds, for example, if they don't have experience in international grant programs and subsidy programs. But there are other options, and this is why we have met here today. So before I pass on the mic again to my colleagues Carolin Anders from Adelphi and Jana Titmanova from Energy Cities, who will tell you about the options and how to join the project, I will tell you a little bit about the project itself. I would like to start, though, by asking you one question about your expectations for today. So we also managed we hope to make it as useful for you as possible. Pauline, could you put on the first question, maybe? You should get a pop-up box in a second. And if you could just very briefly add 1 to 3 words on what you would like to get out of this meeting today, given that we are taking up 2 hours of your time. If we are not able to deliver this today, we will try to follow up later on to make sure that you actually get something for investing this time today, this morning. Financial instruments or financial instruction, practical information. This is exactly what we're going to give you. And the whole project is all about very practical information by linking you with those local authorities and regional authorities who have already done projects that were successful. New approaches, this is exactly what we're focusing on now. Financing tools, exactly. So examples, we will give you some examples. We have mentor institutions, representatives of energy agencies, which are extremely experienced in delivering projects using those innovative financing instruments. They will be here to answer your questions during Q&A and discussion, but they will also be our core mentor team during prospects. We will recruit and invite more cities to share their experience later on as our additional mentors. Capacity, community energy. 1 more minute. We will refer back to this later on when we organize next event. Great, thank you very much. 16 answers, 5 more. Okay, I won't press it. I will go back to my presentation to tell you, there's 24 answers. Thanks a lot for your contribution. External funding. So it sounds like you're in a good room and we are the right group to answer those questions, which is always a relief.
I will leave the poll open for a few more minutes, and Sylwia, if you want, you can go ahead and we can keep those replies as examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so the introduction. How will Prospect Plus, which is the name of our project, and at the same time, the second edition of Prospect, which was quite successful, and I will tell you about it later on. So how will Prospect Plus support you, support local and regional authorities across Europe, because we cover the whole Europe, to access financing for investments in sustainable energy and low emissions mobility? My name is Sylwia Slomiak. I'm part of the consortium who coordinate this project. I represent Eurocities. And this shows you how international the project is. We have many partners in the consortium from all over Europe. You can see that we have both knowledge hubs or think tanks such as IECP, Tesla, Adelphi, but we also have 3 very large international city networks and local authority networks, which is FEDEREN and Eurocities and Energy Cities. And we also have 5 regional agencies from, you can see here from Czech Republic, from Austria, from Slovenia and from Spain, who will support our mentees, those of you who would like to learn about the very successful projects they have implemented, and you would have an opportunity to actually visit them, to join site visits and to join many discussions and learn how this actually worked. What do we focus on? First of all, looking at the thematic focus areas, we want to support a project, quite broad range of projects concerning energy efficiency measures, renewable energy sources, public transport, and low emission mobility. We have grouped those in 5 blocks. We call them public buildings, private buildings, transport, public lighting, and cross-sectoral, so those that actually bring a few technologies and needs together. So that should actually respond to most of sustainable development, energy and climate action plans that local and regional authorities have. And we will focus on a few innovative financing instruments. By innovative, we actually mean those that are not used very often. Not all of them are completely new. For example, energy performance contracting, EPC, which is working with ESCOs. You might know it under ESCOs. Those are not new, but they are not very often used by many institutions. We will discuss citizen finance, which is, for example, crowdfunding and cooperatives. Internal contracting, green bonds, guarantee funds, soft loans, revolving funds, and third-party financing. This is something that Carolin from Adelphi will talk you through to tell you about the benefits of each option and how to actually choose the right one for you, given the conditions, but also how much time preparation needs, etc., etc. So I will not go through it, but basically, if those interest you, you should be able to benefit from the project. And if you join the project as our mentor or mentees, you will be joining online and offline meetings, discussions, study visits, site visits, mentoring visits. And additionally, in this edition, we are also organizing for you local groups. So in case you would like to work with your peers, with your contacts within your country, in case you have any problems speaking English, for example, there will be an opportunity for you to benefit from this project as well. And something additional that we are designing and we will pay a lot of attention to is so-called community of practice, which will be a community, a group of mentor, mentees, but also those participants who are not officially part of the project, but would still like to benefit, learn about specific topics, not going through all the meetings and all the cycles, but learning at least a little bit in their own pace. We will invite you to join those meetings. And then we will also invite you to replication webinars, which will be open to everyone. We will invite you to policy dialogue webinars, meaning those webinars that will present the perspective of local and regional authorities to decision makers in order to provide feedback and help you increase or how your voice is heard across the decision-making institutions. So that even if you now think that subsidies are the only way for you and that it's too complicated given your local context in your country to think about some of the instruments Carolin will explain, don't get discouraged, because this is also why we are here, and we want to pass on this feedback to those institutions that will be able to benefit from it and to design maybe more effective policy incentives or support schemes that would allow you to actually use those instruments. Here you have a few pictures from the last edition as a teaser, showing you what you can see, who you can meet, how this actually looks in practice. So there were a lot of meetings in larger and smaller groups, a lot of stakeholders, very open discussions. All questions could be asked. Nothing would be too basic. There were also online meetings, and in the current situation, we foresee a lot of online meetings nowadays as well. But we are very committed to create this opportunity for you to actually go to the host city, to the host country, and see the projects with your own eyes. We want to target 300 institutions. 200 will be able to become mentors and mentees. So the scale is quite big, and it also means don't get discouraged by the application process, which is not very complicated. Anyhow, but there is a lot of room to participate. 300 institutions altogether. We want to pass on this knowledge and support almost 500 individuals. At least 200 will be our official participants, but we can also invite some additional stakeholders, additional contacts to some of the meetings that the mentors and mentees will participate in. We will have as many as 64 groups, so that's also quite a lot. And we will have 4 learning cycles. A learning cycle is basically a period of meetings with the study visit somewhere towards the end. In terms of what institutions we will work with, as there are different types of institutions present here today, there will be a lot that we want to do with different stakeholders. First of all, regional authorities, local authorities, and energy agencies can join the full program and become mentors and mentees and participate in all of the meetings, study visits, etc., etc. We will also want to work with financing institutions, for example, under the community of practice, or inviting feedback for the policy webinars and replication webinars. We would very much hope that national and EU organizations would also get involved and use the feedback from our participants, given that 200 cities is quite a big group to learn from. We will, of course, share everything for the general public, and we invite the academia as well, representatives of universities and research centers to join us as well, especially under the community of practice and the open events. Summarizing here what I have just said, regional, local authorities and energy agencies can become mentors and mentees, but also the participants of community of practice. They can be chairs of the community of practice if they have particular interest and a particular experience that would be worth sharing with broader audience. They can contribute to policy dialogue. Like I said, we want to have impact with this project. Participants in policy dialogue webinars as presenters and participants. They will be contributing to our policy briefs, which we will be also issuing to ensure that all the knowledge and feedback and analysis we get does not stay within the project itself but actually can be used later on by other institutions. We will invite the best or the most experienced mentors and mentees to become ambassadors and further pass on their experience and knowledge and the prospect methodology to their contacts within their own countries. If you represent other institutions than those 3, you will be able to participate in most of those activities, but you will not be able to be an official mentor or mentee. And what does it actually mean to be a mentor or mentee? There will be at least 5 meetings. Meeting 0, let's say, the stage 0 is an introduction to everyone. I see Carolin is smiling because she will be the one talking everyone through financing instruments again, but a little bit in more detail. Those will be introductory webinars for mentors and mentees that will discuss what is it like to prepare good project proposal and reach finance readiness. So basically, what does financing institutions need to make a decision on granting you the money? There will be 2 introductory meetings in those small groups you will be matched in. So you get to know the project that you can learn from, but you will also discuss your project that needs some additional inspiration. Could I ask those of you who have mics on to mute yourself, please?
Pronto, é isso?
E a outra, ele logo tem que ir à final.
Sylwia, you're now muted. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was just for a second.
Yeah, the third meeting is the study visit or a mentoring visit. A study visit will be for those of you who want to go to the host city, see the project that would be your inspiration. And there will be mentoring visits in smaller groups matched for mentors and mentees, where the mentor would visit the mentee city and together go through preparations of the mentee project, advising, taking into account their experience. Later on, there will be another meeting in those small groups where you will probably know each other quite well by then, to summarize what you have learned, but also to think about any follow-up needed, maybe think about participating in the next cycles, joining the community of practice, and maybe continuing the cooperation in future as well beyond the project. Those of you whose projects will be most advanced, and Adelphi will be helping you assess this, will be able to join a special masterclass in Brussels, where you can go during a workshop. You will be able to go. Oh, sorry. You will be able to go in more detail into the project. I just. Oh, apologies, I need to change into my laptop. Okay, I guess you can see it now. So we will have 4 cycles. The groups I already mentioned, and we are starting already next month. You will be able to apply as a mentee starting today, and you will have 3 weeks to do so. The application process is not difficult, and Diana will talk you through it. If you are not able to join the first cycle, there will be 3 more. I mentioned also that in this edition, we are additionally creating the community of practice, replication webinars, and policy webinars, which you will receive information about as these are ready for those of you who have already expressed interest in this. And finally, what kind of information we want to pass on to the decision makers? We want to talk about the barriers you are facing and the opportunities you have, the feedback that would be important for EU and national institutions in order to strengthen how your voice is heard among the key players. Remember that because part of the consortium are 3 large international city networks, you will be able to actually have contribution, and you will be able to pass on your doubts and your concerns through those organizations. So don't get discouraged. Don't think that there's nothing that can be done at your level. We want to understand what kind of support will be most effective and what you exactly need in order to start using other-than-subsidies financing programs, instruments, how we can trigger this knowledge sharing across different departments in your organizations, and also the strengths and weaknesses that are linked to your climate action. All this is very important to make sure that over the next few years, what is available on the market and what is available through the EU institutions really matches your needs. And our added value will be basically those 3 main points: improving public authorities' capacity to implement sustainable energy and climate action plans with reduced dependence on subsidies. And we will do it through creating this peer-to-peer learning experience. We will support public authorities in choosing the best financing instrument for your particular project and for your particular situation. And we want to find synergies by linking public authorities. We want to create a very unique and a very effective international network that you could actually use beyond the project to apply in, for example, in calls where you need international partners, but also to continue this cooperation and keep learning from each other when you face more demanding climate and energy targets. So this would be from me at the moment. We will have time for questions after Adelphi's presentation. But one question I would like to ask you right now would be, which of the thematic areas are your priorities? And Pauline, could you, it's question number 2. Could you put this up? Those 5 areas are public buildings, private buildings, transport, public lighting, and cross-sectoral. So what I'm asking you about is, what are the main projects about those projects that you are looking for money for? Let's see if we have a very varied group here. Private buildings, that's quite a difficult topic, isn't it? Cross-sectoral. Transport, is it public transport or private transport and promoting electric mobility, for example? Good. Seeing that there are varied responses means that it is it's quite probable that we will be able to provide a lot of very varied groups and experience within those 64 groups that we will have in this project. Private buildings seem to be the biggest priority for all of you, and we've had 33 answers so far. Sustainable mobility, multi-family buildings, yes. That's probably something that EPC can address, but those projects are demanding. Heating systems, I'm not surprised. Great, thank you very much for your contributions. You can keep adding more for another minute or 2. And at the moment, I would pass on the mic to my colleague from Adelphi, who is an expert on financing instruments, and she will be the one to give you the information you came here for today. Thank you.
Sylwia, maybe before passing on the floor, we have one question in the chat for you, I think. So Neriman was asking, so first he was thanking for the explanation, and he was asking what would be the time intervals between the activities of a loop. You are muted now. You are still muted. I can't unmute yourself. Okay, it works now. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, so if you mean the intervals between the individual meetings of the group, so once you begin working with the selected mentors or mentees, it will very much depend on your availability. We expect that once learning cycle, capacity building cycle, would not be longer than 8 months. We would like to ensure that everything fits within 8 months. This, of course, can vary from group to group, depending on your availability. So there will be quite a lot of flexibility in agreeing on when you would be able to meet, when you will be able to meet again, to take as much out of it as possible, also to make sure that if there are any open issues, any follow-up needed, you would have time for that. There will be some obligatory activities such as the introductory webinars, which will have set time, but this is something that we can mention a bit later as well. If what you meant was the difference, the gaps between the 4 learning cycles, one starts in February, another one will begin in the autumn of this year, and there will be 2 more more that will start next year. So 2 more, yes. So there will be a few months between the application processes where you can still rethink your project, think about whether you want to have discuss your projects on a more advanced phase or more on this vision phase, if that would be your preference. Does that clear it up, or shall we come back to it during Q&A later on? Okay. Diana is posting guidelines for applicants. Check the chat for some additional information, and let's come back to this when we have time for discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sylwia, for the introduction. I hope you can all see my full screen. Hello and welcome also from my side. I am Carolin and I work for Adelphi. We are a leading independent think tank for climate, environment and development. And our work takes place at the local and global levels to find solutions to the most urgent political, economic and social challenges of our time. Today, as Sylwia already said, I will like to talk about the different innovative financing schemes that municipalities and local authorities can make use of when you look for financing your sustainable energy and climate projects. And I will also further briefly explain what is meant by financial readiness in the context of Prospect Plus, since this is a new component as compared to the Prospect project. Sylwia has already mentioned a little bit what we consider as innovative financing and why it is so important. We consider innovative financing schemes as non-traditional sources of financing, aside from subsidies and the established institutions such as banks. Oftentimes, these innovative schemes include a mixture of different sources, so can be own funds, public funds, and private funds. And they engage also a lot of different partners, for example, citizens or the private sector. Why are we focusing on those? As we already said, we would like to reduce the dependency on subsidies. And I think we've come to a point where sustainable energy and climate projects no longer need subsidies or don't need to be 100% reliant on subsidies in order to be profitable and in order to be implemented. And we like to decrease the need for own capital of local authorities, and also to reduce the burden on public budgets, and to be able to tap into the financial markets and use private funds. Again, this is a little overview of the financing schemes that I will talk you through today. Basically the same ones that Sylwia has already mentioned. And the slide shows which financing schemes work best in which thematic areas or sectors. Of course, keeping in mind that we are working with local authorities and in municipalities. And the reason why some of these financing schemes are directed at certain sectors has to do a little bit whether authorities want to raise money for projects in the public sector. So whether you as local authorities, for example, want to generate money to invest, or if you want to support and provide access to financing for your citizens, for example, or businesses. And this is also how I categorized those financing schemes. Basically, those two types. The first category includes schemes that, schemes for local authorities to generate money to undertake projects on their own. And the other category refers to financing schemes that provide and raise funding for projects that will be implemented, for example, homeowners or businesses. But the line is not drawn completely sharp. For example, third-party financing is something that can be used in both cases. And it's also important to say that there can be a combination of financing schemes. So, for example, third-party financing with energy performance contracting. Yes. Start with the first category, and with green municipal bonds. So green municipal bonds work pretty much as regular bonds, but they are supposed to fund projects that have a positive environmental and or climate benefits. So obviously that's why they're called green bonds. They focus on projects in the green sustainability sector. Bonds provide the bond issuer, so that would be the borrower, and in our case, the local authority or the municipality, with external funds to finance long-term investments. And the bondholder, that case, the investors, the ones providing the money, will receive a return on their investment. The municipalities can then use the funds to invest in the projects, which will generate revenues, and those then can be used to pay back to the investors. In order to issue a bond, it's very you have to the municipality has to identify first a project and define the use of the proceeds. So it needs to be very clear what the money is used for, and it's also needs to be very transparent. Green bonds can be used for projects in the transport sector, but also in public lighting and in the cross-sectoral projects. How are green bonds carried out or set up? This is just a very brief summarized steps. So there's the pre-issuance phase, where you need to prepare your project, and you should make an analysis of the green bond market and identify projects in which you would like to invest. And you also need to create a framework to structure the bond and need to verify this framework. Once this is all set up, you have the issuance phase and you prepare your offer for the investors. And you present this to potential investors, and then you the bonds are being distributed and allocated, and the received money can be invested. And in the post-issuance phase, monitoring and reporting is very important. As I said, it's a very transparent mechanism, so the proceeds need to be managed, and it needs to be very clear what the money is used for. Benefits of green bonds are, besides the transparency, that the impacts of the projects that are being invested in are being evaluated. So it's also clear what has the money led to, what was actually achieved with the money. It improves liquidity for the municipalities, and for investors, there are also reasonable returns. And this is also a way, so there's not really any existing capital needed from the local authorities to be starting a green bond. The next one is internal contracting, also referred to as intracting. It's also a very interesting mechanism. It allows municipalities to fund energy saving and energy efficiency projects for buildings that they own themselves, so for public buildings. Internal contracting is funded basically through a revolving fund. It works pretty much like a revolving fund. it is replenished by repaying money used. So basically, yeah. So repaying the fund by the savings you achieve through your energy efficiency measures. It has the advantage that there is no interest rate or banking fees because it's all happening internally. And projects can be started faster. So how it is done? You invest money in energy efficiency measures, and the savings that you generate from those measures are booked into a different savings account, and then it kind of works like a cycle. And there's always, always money available to reinvest. And the benefit is also that the financial flows remain within the municipal control, so it doesn't involve any external stakeholders. And this can be, as I said, can be used in the public building sector, but could also be applied to the lighting sector. How to set it up? Basically, you determine which, in the case of public buildings, you determine which properties are suited and should be renovated, and you conduct an energy audit. There is an initial capital needed in this case, and that one is used to carry out the energy efficiency measures. And then the cost savings that you achieve from those energy efficiency measures are booked to a separate account, which will, increase over time, and then those funds can be reinvested into new climate protection measures. So the benefits are that this is a self-reinforcing mechanism. The more you invest, the more savings you will have, the more money you will have to reinvest. So it's kind of, yes, or self-reinforcing mechanism. It also saves a lot of time because you don't have, let's say, banks involved or any other stakeholders. It's easy to set up. And it's a very efficient use of public funds, and also works quite well for municipalities or local authorities with tight budgets, as you only need a relatively small initial capital. And the other benefit is also that the expertise stays within the municipality. Then we are looking at citizen finance. We have basically two forms of citizen finance that I would like to introduce today. Citizen finance is an innovative financial scheme that uses people's investments for funding for a project of the common good. So basically, in other words, it's a financing scheme where people or communities pool together their own financial resources to create projects in the infrastructure that serves all the citizens. Crowdfunding, which I will talk about first, is a collective effort by individuals or groups, or could also be enterprises and organizations who network together and pool their money. Usually this is done via a platform on the internet in order to invest and support efforts which are initiated by a different organization. There are already several or many crowdfunding platforms available. This has, in the recent years, they have been growing and coming up. And the people that provide the funds, so the investors, they also receive a fixed interest rate. And in crowdfunding, usually the people investing do not have ownership rights on the project. And while the amounts, the individual amounts from that are invested are rather small, the number of investors for projects is quite big. And crowdfunding can be applied to pretty much to projects from all kinds of sectors. And pretty much if you intend to apply this scheme, you need to first have a very good plan of the project that you want to have financed, and clarify your idea, and also write it all down. So provide all the information necessary for investors about your project. And then you find a crowdfunding platform and post your project on the platform. Usually they also do the promotion of your project, but as a local authority, you can also do that yourself, especially if you intend to generate funds from your own citizens, for example. Then you select which rewards you want to provide to the backers or investors. And once they are donating money, they will receive those rewards. And you have, yes, and then you have the money to invest into your projects. The other form of citizen finance are cooperatives. They're an autonomous association of persons who voluntarily cooperate for their mutual social, economic, or cultural benefit. Cooperatives, they raise equity capital through a large number of investors, and those include, for example, the citizens. And in addition, they obtain or can obtain debt capital from, for example, cooperative banks or subsidized loans. The municipality is part of the cooperative, and this form of financing is oftentimes applied for renewable energy projects for communities that, for example, intend to reduce their dependency on grid-connected energy. And it also involves a certain degree of ownership by the, of course, by the people in the cooperative. And you will then contract an equipment supplier or a project developer to undertake the project, and also someone to maintain the project. Again, this form of financing can be applied to any kind of projects across the thematic areas that we're focusing on. Citizen finance, or those two forms, there is not really a standardized mechanism. The steps which I explained for crowdfunding, they are pretty standardized, but it's pretty straightforward. But there's not, they are both very simple and easy approaches. They are suitable for short-term projects because, for example, for crowdfunding, depending, of course, on the size of your investment that you need, but it doesn't take so much time in order to raise the funds. There are a lot of other innovative forms of citizen financing. It's a very common practice of pooling resources, and also to engage citizens and to make them aware of the benefits they have from sustainable energy projects. Now we will come to the energy performance contracting. I think it's one of the most known and common, or at least so far it's always been the one that people were most interested in. And this financing scheme involves an ESCO, an energy service company, that acts as a contractor and is responsible for all steps of the project. The energy service company implements the project and takes care of, usually takes care of the financing. The next slide, I will explain with the financing, there can be also different options. However, it doesn't necessarily include capital obligations from the client. So the client only pays for operational expenses. The big advantage or the key component of EPC is that there are guaranteed, or there's a guarantee of the performance of the energy efficiency measures and the resulting energy savings. And the ESCO is also responsible for operation and maintenance of the equipment. All of those details are contractually agreed between the ESCO and the client. And the client pays regular service fees to the ESCO to obtain the guaranteed savings. And contracts, a typical ESCO or EPC contract usually lasts between 8 to 15 years. This model is best applicable for, or works really well in the building sector, both private and public. However, of course, in the private building sector, it wouldn't really require a local authority to get involved. So for our program here, we like to focus on the public building sector and also on public lighting. Particularly public lighting, because it's very easy to calculate the expected savings, because you know how much time a day your light will be on, and how much savings you will generate with, for example, improved equipment. What are the steps or how to carry out energy performance contracting? You need to first have an analysis of the current situation and the savings potential. So you need to conduct an energy audit. Then you design the project measures, what you would like to improve, what technical measures you want to implement. And you do a cost versus savings analysis. And then once you have selected the energy company that you would like to work with, the project measures are being implemented, and the service is provided by the ESCO. The benefits of this financing model, as I've already said, are that you as a client have a guaranteed energy savings, and the ESCO also handles the performance risk. So if the savings are not guaranteed, it's their performance risk. They are also responsible to make sure that the equipment works well and take care, for example, of repair and maintenance. The energy service company also provides professional services. So basically, it's a full package. They really know what they're doing, and they are professionals in their field. And they oftentimes also offer financial contributions. And in many cases, as a client, you don't need to obtain the financing yourself. To the third-party financing, because here we have a crossover between those two financing schemes. While third-party financing generally is a traditional way of financing a project through a loan, can be applied in combination with performance contracting. And then that would mean that either the building owner, so the client, or in the graphic here, the energy user, can take a loan from the bank. This is what we see here on the right side of the slide, and make an investment in energy efficiency measures. So the loan and the risk with it lies with the client. Or the ESCO can also take the loan. That's sometimes the case if they don't want to or are unable to use their own equity. While the client bears the financial risk of the loan, they can use the guaranteed savings to back their investment. And the repayment of the loan plus the interest rate is, of course, the responsibility of the client. So in the case where the, let's say, building user, building owner takes the loan, it's their responsibility. And this has to be considered when defining the service fees for the ESCO. So you have to factor in that the savings need to be large enough to repay the loan and pay for the service towards the ESCO. If the ESCO takes the loan, so this you can see on the left side, they invest in the energy efficiency project or in the measures. The service fee that the ESCO receives from the client needs to obviously include the costs for the loan repayment and the interest. Sometimes ESCOs with high credit rating prefer to use third-party financing because the weighted capital costs for internal funds are oftentimes much greater than what can be accessed at the financial markets, and it's cheaper for them to take a loan. So how can municipalities contribute to that, and what is their role? So if we're talking here about public buildings, then municipalities or local authorities as an institution are trusted by their citizens, and they can play a key role in coordinating energy retrofits programs. So for example, they can be a guarantor for high quality retrofits. They can provide assistance in the form of legal, technical, or financial expertise. For example, for the development of standard energy retrofit schemes, or including standard contracts and quality criteria and such things. So they can basically coordinate the scheme and make sure that the retrofits that are carried out achieve a certain standard and that everything basically is in order. However, if this financing scheme is applied to, for example, public buildings, then here in our case, the energy user would be the municipality itself. So it's basically, the energy performance scheme that I've just introduced. But if municipality doesn't want to or doesn't have their own funds, then an EPC in combination with third-party financing from a bank can be applied. The benefits of third-party financing is that banks usually have a professional and technical expertise. Again, like for the energy performance contracting, the contract provider, so the ESCO in that case, manages the performance risks, and the positive project cash flows from the guaranteed savings minimize the risk of repayment to the bank. The next one, I think we have about 3 more. I'll try to hurry up a bit. Revolving funds. So as the name already says, it's a fund that finances a continuing cycle of investments with an initial amount received from shareholders, creditors, or donors, and later through the reimbursement of provided funding or loans to projects. So the recovered funds basically become available for further reinvestment in other projects. Usually revolving funds are like green bonds a little bit, that they focus on a certain kind of projects. In our case, it would be sustainable energy projects. And this is a form which is often used for non-profit making purposes. And the shareholders and creditors providing the initial investment also receive an interest. A municipality can also set up a revolving fund with their own initial investment, if that is available. And however, one needs to know that a legal status by the fund authority is highly recommended, and legal regulatory conditions need to be checked in your countries whether a local authority is allowed to undertake financing activities. But of course, one can always work with a fund authority who handles all of that. This financing scheme can be applied to the transport sector and to private buildings and cross-sectoral projects. And basically, as I referred earlier, it works. It's similar to the internal contracting, but with the difference that a revolving loan provides funding to, for example, could be used by citizens to obtain funding to invest into their private renovation of their private buildings. How to set up a revolving fund? You need to first establish the purpose of the revolving fund, including a needs assessment and the eligibility of the investment. And then set eligibility requirements for the borrowers and define the fund and loan specifics. It's always also good to set up a committee to review the loan applications. And then you promote the revolving fund and capitalize with funds from external investors and from the community. And then loans can be provided to the borrowers. It is also relatively simple to set up. The funds revolve indefinitely, so you can create a long-term source of funding. It's also a very efficient use of public funds, as again, you just need some smaller initial capital to start. And it eliminates the barrier by creating liquidity for the local authority, and the eligibility requirements for the borrowers, they can be changed as market conditions change as well. Then we have guarantee funds. It's also one of the most commonly used financing tools to facilitate private investments in energy efficiency projects. Guarantee funds enable the engagement of financial institutions and allow sharing of credit risk or distribution of loss in energy efficiency investments. They are basically a way of transferring the credit risk from a creditor to another entity, to the guarantor, which would then be the local authority, that is capable and ready to deal with part of the risk and or cover the loss. Guarantee funds can be provided by local authorities as loan guarantees for banks or financial institutions to cover up the financial losses of non-payment by the debtors, such, for example, as homeowners or ESCOs. It is also a mechanism that facilitates and triggers investment and eases access to financing for citizens and businesses. And it will give the investors, so the banks, a more certainty and thus bigger incentive to invest in or finance sustainable energy projects. How to set up or how to carry out guarantee funds. So you have to first see if there are commercial banks in your area that you could potentially work with. A guarantee fund can also be established, for example, together with other municipalities. You have to then establish the loan pot, so that could be, your own funds, or again, either external funds from investors or donors. And then you need to agree upon the legal issues between all the parties, and especially with the bank. Of course, you also need to make sure to obtain permissions, licenses, and verifying compliance with all regulations. After agreeing upon the loan product details, you can promote and market the guarantee fund. The benefit of a guarantee fund is that the leverage effect is greater than for a loan, because you provide only the guarantee in case a loan isn't paid back, and with relatively small money, you can have quite a big leverage effect. It also reduces the risk for banks, and provides leverage for private sector funds. And it reduces the collateral and interest rate for the borrowers. Then we have, again, soft loans. Soft loans, I think, are quite common and well known. They usually exist with regional, national, and international development banks, but also a municipality can support the provision of soft loans by either subsidizing the interest rate of loans, of general bank loans from partner banks, or by providing guarantees, as we just talked about. Or local authorities can set up a revolving fund which disperses soft loans. So again, we have here a combination of different schemes. It has to be, of course, kept in mind that, as a local authority or a city is not a bank, and it's not advisable to manage the loans themselves. That's what this should be done by partner banks or fund managers. Soft loans are schemes, financing schemes with below market interest rates and longer payback periods. They also may provide interest-free periods at the beginning of the loan. And so basically a municipality can subsidize the interest rate so that it's lower from that what a bank would usually charge, or it can provide guarantees. And then it pretty much works as a normal loan scheme. The soft loans in this case could be used for private buildings. And municipalities, in addition to providing subsidies for the interest rate, can also take care of the communication of those schemes towards the citizens and inform them about the benefits of retrofitting. They could possibly also provide training to energy advisors, and again, take a more coordinating role here as well. The steps to carry out are to find banks that offer soft loans for energy retrofits. Then you negotiate with those banks and decide which kind of support you can offer, inform citizens about the scheme, and potentially train energy auditors. Benefits are that the scheme is very scalable and flexible, and also easy to implement. Again, the funds can revolve. The duration of soft loans are shorter than for commercial loans, and yes, the financial benefits signal the market about desired improvements in energy efficiency. So I think this is were the 8 financing schemes. Sorry that it took so long. I try to really just touch on them briefly, and there's of course a lot more to learn. And I hope at least I have triggered your interest in learning more about these schemes, and to take part in our capacity building program. However, we wanted to somehow give you this information in the beginning to understand what schemes there are and which one is maybe most suitable for your project and your municipality. Of course, it always depends on the framework conditions that exist. Yes, if you join our program, you will learn a lot more in detail about those schemes and especially about the experiences that the mentor cities did. I just want to very quickly talk about the finance readiness and what it means. And basically, it means to gather all necessary information that financial institutions require to make informed decisions about your investment project. And this is what we would like to show you throughout the learning program. There are different components and different things needed that financial institutions seek to have, and those include, of course, different analyses and studies like financial and economic analyses, but also to understand the market barriers for your project and the legal and regulatory frameworks that support or don't support your project. And the project readiness or finance readiness assessment that we provide in Prospect Plus is aims to make mentees aware of what their project is still missing or to understand on which level they currently are to be able to obtain funding from for their climate and energy projects. And the assessment basically, the tool that we will develop will assess the financial maturity of the planned and ongoing project of the mentees to highlight possible funding sources and, if required, provide suggestion for potential improvements and recommendations. And this assessment will be a self-assessment that the mentees can undertake at the end of each of the respective learning cycles directly online with direct answers. So there's no time waiting for an evaluation. It's a self-assessment. Yes, thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I think, Sylwia, I don't know if we have some time. Let's see. But yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, Carolin. Yeah, I think it was very ambitious I think it was important to have this overview, to actually not rush through it, because it shows how many options there are and how much time you actually need to learn more about it. And this is what we are offering to our participants. And if you join the project, I see quite a lot of questions already, so we can smoothly move on to the Q&A, and also maybe we will adjust a little bit the section on best practices. But before we start the Q&A, and I will ask you some additional questions, Carolin, I wanted to add two things when it comes to the benefits of the different types of innovative financing instruments. You probably all know that if you are relying on subsidies, you are very much limited by the conditions of a given call or a given subsidy program. And there is very little flexibility. Very often it's not, the cost of a given technology is also limited. There is a cap on it, which means that if you want to invest in most future-proofed and most innovative technologies, those might not be eligible. So you are actually losing this opportunity if you focus on subsidies. And subsidies are often seen as kind of free money. And local and regional authorities think that it's actually good use of public money if you don't have to pay extra to an ESCO or a bank. But when you take into account the time you need to prepare, first of all, to wait for a call announcement, to find a suitable subsidy, to prepare the application, then to looking at all the limitations, then to wait for the results of the call, and at the end, you are actually implementing the project or starting implementation later than you could be if you would be using different financing sources. And that's something that should be taken into account. And also referring back to EPC and working with ESCOs, which is quite where the interest is growing. Let's also remember that there are different types of EPC projects. There are very small EPC projects that do not foresee investments in infrastructure, but rather improvement of how energy is used within buildings, and in this way you can have very quick results, and it is the private partner, not you, not public authority, that takes the responsibility for the results. There are those investment types, those bigger EPC projects, where again you do not risk public money if the project does not bring expected results, and this is the risk you transfer onto the private partner. So the company really makes an effort to make sure everything works very well, and this, in my view, is really a very very important benefit, and it's actually value for money for public authorities. Okay, we also have with us Anya from the Upper Austria Energy Agency, which is one of our partner mentors, and they are extremely experienced when it comes to EPC projects. They've delivered over 200 EPC projects, as far as I remember, so we can learn from them. And they have also worked with 30 mentees in the first edition of Prospect. So maybe both Carolin and Anya could join in and reply to some questions that we already have about EPC. I've seen that Robert Pernetta has asked 2 questions as regards EPC. Robert, would you like to switch on your mic and ask the questions to the ladies? Or shall I just read it for you?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for the very good presentation. I actually withdrew my EPC question. It was a bit too specific. I think one thing that is very important, that I got 2 likes on that one, is not seeing grants, especially EU grants or innovative financial instruments, as opposing each other. Because when I have a limited budget or a limited balance sheet, there is often just no alternative than this free money. And I think what is very important is making the combination. Unfortunately, many countries, if you go for EPC, you cannot get a grant because nobody has figured out how to get a grant for a public building to a private company and so on. Even the European Commission has made the rules easier and clearer on this, and we have worked on that one. What is really needed that this is also happening on the ground. And it would be good if Prospect would also look at it, and especially if you're feeding back to national authorities, EU authorities, and also to the EIB, because we actively support this sector. And I was not sure if Christophe mentioned this, but there also will be advisory service from the Invest EU Advisory Hub. And this is at least for larger projects available, also some advisory support. And the other question, well, is on municipal bonds. You only present on all the instruments the advantages. And I think municipal bonds is, and especially green municipal bonds, that's only for a limited audience. Could you
Yes, it's very
important.
First of all, it's great to have EIB with us, and happy to have you here, Robert, but also very happy that EIB would be interested in working with us on Prospect and feeding into what we will be doing, but also learning from our participants. So this is great. This is what we were hoping for. Of course, there are always benefits and there are always cons, and looking at the local context and the local needs and the policy opportunities or policy instruments that are available in your particular countries will be very important, and we will be also discussing this. But now, maybe Carolin, would you be able to refer to some of the limitations that we would recommend looking into when our applicants decide which instrument they want to learn more about? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I haven't actually prepared that. to be honest, but I can also refer to the handbooks that we will put online, where for every scheme that was mentioned today, we have a lot more information. It's simply not possible to go through all of it in this limited time for all those 8 schemes. But I would like to recommend to look at the handbooks.
We will send on the information as a follow-up to this webinar. And do remember that this is really just a flavor, to give you a flavor of what the whole process will be like, because the community of practice, the online meetings and the replication webinars will be fully devoted to a certain financial instruments where we can go into detail, where we will talk about examples, where we will have local authorities and regional authorities and energy agencies who have used those. They have expertise in them, and they can share what worked, what didn't work, what they would or have already done a bit different. So this is exactly the aim of the meetings we will have under Prospect. Just looking at the chat if there are any other questions. So improvising here a bit because I'm conscious of the time. Could I kindly ask Anya from the Upper Austria Energy Agency about your experience with mainly EPC, as I understand, but also talking about the downside and the things that public authorities should pay attention to when considering EPC. Also, as Robert mentioned, that these could be combined with subsidies. Anya, are you here?
Hello. So, okay, this is a long question. So, but I think also Carolina already mentioned a few things on EPC when EPC make sense. So, energy efficiency improvement measures often required a significant upfront investments, and this is a major barrier for the most municipalities in Europe. And so EPC can offer for such solutions can offer for these things a really good solution. It works best for technologies with a short payback time. So this is when APC makes sense, and it's not only a financing model, it's also an operator model. So it's not pure financing, it's not pure on financing, and it can take many forms. It's very adaptable to the specific country contexts, and yeah. So this is. It really, you have to take a look in detail for the specific country needs, and there is a high interest in EPC, and it's a lot about trust and knowledge, and yeah, you have to explain. This is key on EPC.
Thank you, Anya. Can you hear me? Because my computer is playing up a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So while I have you here, could you maybe also tell us a little bit more about your experience working with mentee cities in the first edition of Prospect, and what were the main questions and challenges they were mentioning during your cooperation, and to what an extent do you think this approach we had allowed them to move towards new financing models? And was it actually a good idea to participate?
It's really the municipalities had to understand the concept of EPC, that there is the advantages of what energy contracting can give, so that there is no own investment required. there can be, but not really. There is an investment without debts. So unlike loan financing, energy contracting financing is usually debt neutral, since the ESCO invests and clients only pay the ESCO's contracting rate. Then there are also additional benefits for EPC, like modern systems and efficient technologies, increase the user comfort, and the use of efficient energy technologies can increase the environmental friendliness. We are having these 4 steps, and in the first step it was always explaining the basic knowledge on EPC, but it also really made sense to do it also in this 2-day site visit, to go again to really explain it more often, and that people can do it, and then that they really can see how EPC works really in practice, that they can go out, that they can see how it works in the municipalities, how it works with the ESCOs. So we also always had an ESCO on board who explained their role, and to see that it works, and that it absolutely makes sense.
Great, thanks a lot. So Anya will be there in case you want to learn more from her and see her in person. And also I wanted to ask now Teresa from SEMO, I think she's here as well, because the agency she represents, and they are also our official mentor, has experience in a few different types of financing mechanisms, such as revolving funds, citizen financing, third-party financing. So Teresa, if you could maybe mention very briefly the most interesting part of the projects that you worked on and the benefits you have seen from applying those financing schemes.
Hello, everyone. I think I'm going to choose one that probably stands out. This one hasn't been mentioned already. And I forgot actually what category I put it in, but it's kind of almost, it's a type of internal financing or third financing option. It's a fund of energy savings and renewables. So that's the money that's being saved while implementing energy efficient projects is put aside, and that is used to motivate the organizations that took part, but not only the organizations in which buildings the money has been saved, but also staff of the municipal staff that took part in the process and was instrumental in preparing a good proposal, looking for quality contractors, and then helping the organization to implement all the energy efficient measures. And actually, I'm only talking. It's an experience that's been first time used in the city of Litoměřice that Jaroslav used to work for previously.
Yeah, if I can just add, I can add also some information. Hello to everybody. So we use this instrument since 2014, and 2019 it was used. And as Teresa mentioned, it was something that we, because we in the city of Litoměřice, we already have the system of energy management, so we knew about our energy consumption of our buildings. So every year it was possible to evaluate what are the savings for the municipal sector, and from the savings just something about 35% was donated back to the municipal budget, 30% was used to the energy saving fund, and through this fund the new projects were prepared, and also 30 or 35% were dedicated to directed to municipal organization to motivate them and to pay some operational costs, and also to, for example, to evaluate some employees for some not standard work and something like this. And we also put in the in the tables you asked, we also put some experience in the EPC project. So I was from the beginning to the end and to the evaluation process and so on. So from the preparation in the big EPC project with 13 buildings in the municipal sector. And we also, so it's what we can also offer for in the terms of financial instruments.
I'm sure there will be a lot of people who want to work with you during those 4 cycles. I can see a comment from Asen regarding bonds. Asen, would you like to comment and let us share your knowledge with us while we are talking about it? No?
Thanks, Sylvia. My suggestion is we should also consider sustainability-linked bonds. I know they're very popular in the corporate world, and we're also working with a number of sovereigns to introduce such bonds. And the mechanism usually is where a set of KPIs are linked to the interest rate. So that provides that unique incentive for the beneficiary to achieve set of targets and pay less.
Thanks. I very much like that, even though it was not planned, we already had this exchanges and discussion, not only just Q&As. So I hope this will continue as part of the community of practice. Before I pass on to Eurocities for the really very last information about how to actually join and benefit from the project, I would like to introduce you to Angela from Spain, from the city of Valladolid. I think she's here as well. And because they are also our official first core mentor focusing on transport, for example, low carbon transport projects. So she can introduce herself and her organization so that you know that there is another option to another organization you can work with under this project. Angela, hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, well, my name is Angela Rivada, and I work in the Agency for Innovation and Economic Development of the Municipality of Valladolid. We participated in prospect in the last prospect, so we could offer a mentoring process mainly focused on the topic of transport. Also because we work with third financing the mechanism to improve and to enhance the electric vehicles for fleet companies. And well, we will also very happy to have all of you on board, and of course in the case of local groups from the Spanish cities, that I think that there are also very interested in how to improve and how to make possible their energy efficiency plan. So very happy to join all of you. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's good to see the faces behind the names, although we cannot, unfortunately, we didn't have the time today to introduce you to everyone. But like I said, we will follow up and we will let you know more. One question to all of you before we move on to tell you how to join the project. Pauline, could you put on question number 4, please? And we would basically want to know which of the financing instruments Carolin briefly explained are of most interest to you. It's a multiple choice question as far as I remember, so just let us know what is your priority, what is most interesting for you. It will be easier for us to also design the next steps and to plan work in the next few months. And Pauline, are you there? Or I can do it. Yeah.
Hello, Sylvia. Sorry, I had an issue with my Wi-Fi. I could hear you, but could not do anything.
It's fine. It's there already.
Okay. So you managed to launch it. Perfect. I can see it now.
Thank you. So if you could just take a moment and mark those options that are of most interest to you. It's not binding. It's not that if you mark it, you will not be able to participate in other meetings. We just want to get an idea of what was most interesting for the participants today. A few more answers, please. 12. It will also help us prepare for what kind of applications we might get, both from mentors and mentees, and to plan where to look for the best practice examples so that you can benefit most. 30 seconds. So EPC and working with ESCOs, not surprisingly, seems most interesting, but not only, green bonds as well. Great, and we can see interest in all of these. There aren't any where no one would be interested in learning about. So that also means that we, I guess, designed the project well. Okay, thank you very much. And the last last presentation by Jana from Energy Cities, who will explain how you can actually join as a mentor or mentee, what the process looks like, when you can apply, and any practicalities that you might need at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Sylwia. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, this last presentation just to give you very practical information about how to join the project as a mentor or as a mentee. What are the benefits of becoming mentor and mentee? I think I do not need to spend too much time on this, because if you're in this room, it means that you're interested to become one of those. But maybe just very briefly, maybe the most important to say about mentors, that we are looking for persons, for experts from municipalities or local and regional energy agencies who have already implemented sustainable energy and climate action projects that have been rather successful. So something that they can share with others. From our experience, many people hesitate to become mentors because they are not sure that they have something really interesting to share or that they have enough expertise. But do not worry about this, because it's not only a one-way exchange between coming from mentor to mentees. It's a both-way exchange always. So the advantage of becoming mentor is that you always get feedback, questions, ideas from mentees who are coming from different countries, from different contexts, who can always also share their own experience, who can help you to maybe improve your own project and so on. So this is important to take into account. Maybe a small incentive as well for mentors to join the project, because often these experts are, of course, and everyone very, very busy. It takes time to volunteer and to become mentor, to host mentees, but we have an expert fee that can encourage you to join. And one of the incentives can also be that you as a mentor can also join other groups offered by our other mentors. So you can also learn from others. And on top of all this, of course, that your projects and your expertise are promoted largely throughout Europe through our project and all the city networks and the network of regional and local energy agencies that are involved in the project. And why to become a mentee? So if you have a project that you would like to implement and the financing is a barrier, or you're already in the preparation phase, but you would like to validate and to learn from others, then yeah, you should not hesitate to join as a mentee, to learn from other cities or energy agencies around Europe, and to especially get tailor-made assistance that is adapted to your learning objectives and needs. So thanks to Prospect, you will get direct access to our mentors, but also to other cities, regions, and agencies that are facing similar challenges through the learning program and through the community of practice that was already mentioned by Sylwia before. How to get practically involved. So the important link to follow is displayed on the slides, and you will have access to them after this webinar, of course. The upcoming learning cycles that are planned planned for February this year, November this year, and then August 23 and May 24. So if you do not manage to join this time, you always have chances to join in the next 3 learning cycles, and maybe some more might be added. On this page, you will also find the call for applications. So the application forms that are also downloadable, in PDF format, so that you can have a look at the questions, prepare them in advance, and then apply. You can always get back to the application form that you have started, so you don't have to finish it at one time. And also guidelines for applicants. So that these are the guidelines on how to fill out the application form. And if you would like to join the community of practice and stay in touch with us, with the consortium and all the partners, you can express your interest through an expression of interest document that will be also available on this page. Now maybe I can tell you a little bit more about where we stay with the first learning cycle. So in December last year, we have contacted, or we have promoted the project towards potential mentors, and we have selected 13 to 14 of them throughout Europe. These are the mentors that are already confirmed, and now we are looking for mentees. So the application process will start today. The application form is already available. And you're encouraged to apply by 28th of January this year. Then we will do the matching process to match the mentors with mentees. We will do so based on your application forms. So I can show you on top of the basic information about you, the contact information about the municipality and so on, you will be asked which is the thematic area and the financing scheme that is the most interesting for you. You will have, you can choose 2 of them. So there will be preference 1 and preference 2. So for example, if you are having a project in the field of public buildings, and you identify that energy performance contracting would be the financing scheme and operating scheme that you would like to learn more about, because it seems the most relevant for your own local project, then you can tick the box public buildings as preference 1. And if you're also interested in, for example, public lighting and energy performance contracting, you can tick this box under preference 2. What will happen then when we close the call is that we will see who is interested in public buildings and energy performance contracting, and we will match you with the relevant mentor who has expertise in this field. If it's not possible to match you for public buildings, let's say for some reasons, then we will see if we can match you with a mentor who can offer expertise on public lighting, and we will offer you this second option. Just to show you these are the thematic areas and financing schemes that we have on offer for this first cycle. We have mentors from Austria, from the Czech Republic, Portugal, France, Ireland, Spain, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Slovenia. Our experts are either local or regional energy agencies or municipalities and regions. And it is not a closed lot of mentors, I would say, because these are the mentors that we managed to get on board for the first learning cycle. But for the upcoming learning cycles, we might get other mentors with other expertise in different thematic areas and in different financing schemes. So for example, for this time, we have no one for green bonds or for soft loans, I think. But we might have them for the next learning cycles. And especially now that we know that you are so interested in private buildings, we can really make an additional effort to get the mentors through our networks who would have expertise in this field. One very important thing to say to facilitate you the application process and also to make sure that you have better chances to be matched with the mentors who are interesting for you is that when you fill in the application, please be as precise as possible when you describe the local project for which you seek support. So let us know in which phase your project is, whether it's really a very basic first idea that you want to implement a project, but you have not done any feasibility studies, you have no analysis done, no energy audits, and so on. You need to learn about all these steps. So it's in a very, very basic stage. In that case, we will rather include you in the study visits and in groups of more people, of 5 to 6, 7 people who have maybe a little bit less expertise or who has the projects that are less mature. And if you have already really progressed in your project, you have all this analysis done and your project is rather mature and you need a specific expertise, please explain what you need in your application form and we will match you with the mentor who can be really a mentor only for you. So you will be we will provide to you the peer-to-peer learning. So there would be a one-to-one exchange between you and the mentor who can really look closely at your specific project. But in every case, please try to be as concrete and as detailed as possible, explaining where you stand in your project, what exactly you need, what are your difficulties, so that we can find the best match for you. And I think that's it. So the call for mentees is open until 28th of January. If I have forgotten anything important, maybe my colleague Blondine, who is also with us, can complete. Or other colleagues.
No, I have
nothing
to add, Jana. It was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Jana. And I can only add from my own experience, because I was a mentee in the first edition of Prospect. I was not part of the coordinating team back then, that the application process is really easy. So if you know what your organization needs, if you are more or less aware of where you need to go and exactly what types of challenges you are facing, then probably you don't need more than 45 minutes to complete the application, or even less. You will just need to have endorsement from your mayor or deputy mayor or a director in terms of energy agencies to confirm that what you learn during this process will also be passed on to your colleagues, and that it's actually the organization that is taking part in this educational experience rather than just an individual person. But we very much also want to focus on building this international network and assisting you to build connections and linkages with other local authorities. Do we have any questions about the application process for mentees that is starting today? It's a pretty short one, like Jana mentioned, 3 weeks. If not, you have the links to the guidelines for applicants, and we will follow up by email. So at the very end of our meeting now, thank you. First of all, thank you. Should the project owners be a municipality and public agency, or could it be an NGO? Mentors and mentees need to be either representatives of either regional or local authorities or energy agencies. NGOs, think tanks, consultants can only participate as guests if they are endorsed by the mentors and mentees. So for example, if you are an NGO cooperating often with a certain city, they might invite you to join some meetings online. The cost of your participation would not be eligible, but you can still join them in those meetings. And you can also join the community of practice and the network and events that we will be designing. I will be in touch with everyone from the registration list who agreed to receive information about the community of practice, so that I also get your feedback when we are designing it to make sure that all relevant points are taken into account. And I will definitely keep in mind what Robert and Asen mentioned today. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. 2 last questions, if you could spare 30 seconds more. Pauline, could you put on question number 5 so we know how many of you are actually interested in applying as mentor, mentee, or both? And those questions are always quite risky. In case you say no, we would be very worried. So we have 15 potential mentors, or there's some more? Good. So there's most interest in becoming a mentee. Have a look at the website today, and you can join already the first cycle. A few more clicks. Okay, let's leave it here. And maybe the last question to help us assess how well we've done today. If you could just let us know on a scale from 1 to 10, how useful this webinar has been for you. And should we do it in a similar way next time, or should we actually think about some other formats? Okay, so thank you very much for your time. 2 hours, 10 minutes. We were afraid that you might leave earlier, but it seems that we are able to offer you something interesting. And we do hope that many of you will apply. Those of you who are not eligible will join our community of practice, and you will be part of this large group, which will also feed into the EU institutions and national institutions to bring more attention to what's needed by local and regional authorities in order to reach them increasingly tight deadlines and tough climate targets. If you would have any follow-up questions, do contact us through the website. We will answer your questions. And now, thank you very much to all my colleagues who prepared and spoke. Thank you to everyone who asked questions and everyone who voted. And have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.